We are going to be tackling Dennis Prager, and he's got a killer of a topic for us to talk about. And it's, should every murderer be allowed to live? Now, I'm going to go and poison the well by saying that I am anti-death penalty. I am not for the death penalty, personally speaking. And I've got a variety of reasons why that is, and ideally, Dennis will give me an opportunity to elucidate on those reasons. But before that, I do want to make a little bit of an announcement. First of all, if you are not subscribed to me on YouTube already, well, let me go ahead and say that maybe your mental health is being positively affected by that decision. But if you want to help me, that is an awesome thing you can do. It really helps the channel out as you subscribe. Growlithe is barking. I really wish he wasn't barking in the middle of a recording portion, but here we are. What are we going to do? Also, if you are not following me over on Twitch, that is at twitch.tv/NekoSuris, the streams that were normally on YouTube are currently happening over on Twitch as I try to build an audience over there and try to push for partners. So if you have the ability to follow and Twitch is a thing that you didn't even know that I was doing, then, well, maybe there's an opportunity over there. That said, Dennis, tell me why you want people dead. Let's go. Technology's not working for me. Boom! There it is. Thank you very much, Bofor and Dark Madness, for the follows. Dennis, give me information. Wrinkle my brain with your knowledge.
There is something grotesque, truly grotesque.
About Dennis Prager, yes. Oh, that's not where we were going? Oh, my bad. My bad. That's not what I was trying... I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to do the ad hominems. Please, technology, take me back to where I can hear the arguments.
About the idea that every murderer should be allowed to live. Some, yes. If it's not first degree, not premeditated, no torture.
So, wait a minute, hold on. I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that the definition of murder is that it must be premeditated. Murder, the unlawful premeditated killing of one being by another. As a verb, kill someone unlawfully with premeditation. So, maybe he means all killers? Maybe he means killers should be able to live? That's not the same thing as murderers. I'm fighting semantics here. We'll go ahead and be charitable and assume he means killers. But just know that definitionally a murderer is somebody who premeditates and unlawfully kills. There's also an angle to this that I'm going to tackle in a little bit that's more than a little distressing. But, alright, Dennis. My brain is smooth. You can currently skate on it. Please, fill me with knowledge.
I don't think every murderer should be put to death. But the abolitionists think every murderer should be allowed to live no matter how many they slaughtered.
Well, so here's the thing. Killing a lot of people is bad. It's horrible, yes. What do we actually do when we kill that person? What are we trying to stop? So let's talk about what the purpose of punishment is. Do we punish people to get even? Because if you do that, then you're just being petty. You don't punish people to get even. You punish people to teach them a lesson. Now, what lesson can be taught in death? I would argue not really. There's no lesson to be taught in killing someone. Like, they're done. They're out. They're gone. They can never repay a debt to society because, well, again, they're dead. Unless you think that they can magically repay that debt in the afterlife, which I don't think you can. On top of that, Dennis, there's another angle to this here. If we kill a murderer and we have to bloody somebody else's hands, is that a good thing? Now, that's not necessarily an argument against the death penalty at all. That's just my personal musings. Like, what's the purpose of getting somebody else's hands bloody? If you have to kill somebody in self-defense to prevent yourself from being killed, sure, but again, that's preventative. If we have a murderer in a jail cell, already captured, already not able to hurt any more people in society, at what point do we say that they need to be killed? At what point, like, what are we preventing at that point? If they are continuing to cause problems in their confinement, then maybe there's a bit more of an argument there. But again, if the purpose of punishment is not to get even, and it functionally can't be to get even, because that's petty, I don't care about your need to get even with anybody, and the purpose of punishment should be something like reform, then what purpose does killing the murderer serve? What does it do? And yeah, there's a point in the chat that Mr. Small Government sure does like the idea of the government having legal jurisdiction to kill people. That's another thing. So, and I'm having to close that door because the air conditioning turns on, and then Growlithe opens the door, and the air conditioning is on, and all that other fun stuff. But there's another angle here, a rambling angle, and that is, at what point should the state be given the authority to enact violence on the people? Do you think killing someone is enacting violence on them? Because I do. So why would we allow, if you are supposedly the party of small government, why should you be fighting desperately for the state to have the power to kill? I don't think that that's a very healthy thing to argue for. I don't think that it's a functional thing to argue for, but apparently Dennis does. Now, again, I have to ask, what is the purpose of killing them? If the purpose is just that they can't kill anybody else, you've already removed them from society. If the purpose is to get even with them, I don't think that that punishment should be punitive. I think it should be reformative. And if Dennis is going to argue with the point of no matter how many people they've slaughtered, there is an angle here that we need to consider. And it's kind of a scary angle. I want you to consider the fact that Dennis Prager and his constituents are anti-abortion. They believe that abortion is murder. They also have a very broad definition of murder here as well. Also, Jammer says, what does putting someone in prison for the rest of their life do to reform people? So, there's another angle to this, which is that the prison system in America right now is screwed up and does not reform people. The prison system as it currently exists needs to be reformed as well. So please keep that in mind going forward here. I'm not advocating for keeping people in the American prison system. The American prison system does not reform you. It doesn't fix issues. It just exacerbates them and makes them worse. America has one of the highest rates of recidivistic crimes, where people go and commit the exact same or worse crimes once they get out of prison as they did when they were in it. And there's a myriad of reasons for that, from the prison systems themselves not doing a whole lot to actually help the people within the walls of the prison system, and also the stigma and stipulations that are put on people once they leave the prison system and their inability to get stable work, causing them to enact more crime. There's a bunch of issues with our current prison system, but let me go ahead and say that there's an angle that Dennis Prager can use here that I'm worried about, and that is the death penalty for people who engage in abortion. Because note, he believes that abortion is murder. He hasn't said it in this video, but he does say it in other ones. I'm not bringing this argument up whole cloth randomly. If he's going to have this argument about at what point should we be able to kill a murderer, he can then argue that we should be able to kill a doctor who's performed a variety of abortions, or a woman who, say, had been raped multiple times and needed to get multiple abortions, just circumstantially, because that was what was happening. Or even less dire scenarios. Okay. I'm going to close that again. I don't know how long. I need to have a camera just trained on the door so you guys can see how often that gets opened. Dennis, I've laid out a bunch of shit. You've 30 seconds in and you gave me a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. Let's continue.
Adolf Eichmann was the architect of the Holocaust. He was Hitler's accountant, the guy overseeing the slaughter of the 6 million Jews in Europe. 6 million. Mm-hmm. Including about 1.5 million children. The Nazis considered Jewish children as worthy of death as adults. And Israel, which does not have the death penalty, never had it, executed Eichmann. I think it was the only, there might have been one other, it was the only person they ever executed. Even anti-capital punishment Israel thought, you know what, if you oversee the murder of millions of innocent people, you don't deserve to live. Of course, my challenge to Israel was, okay, so if you kill millions, you deserve to die. But if you only kill 2, then you don't? Why, those 2 lives are less precious? The evil is less evil?
Well, so let's go ahead and talk about evil for a moment. Evil is not quantifiable, and anybody that believes it is quantifiable has been deluded into thinking that we have something called evil that can be measured in a cup. Evil itself is an arbitrary measurement that we as human beings transpose onto literally anything. Evil and good only function, realistically, as measurement devices. These are things that we call something evil or good as a descriptor, because it's meant to measure the amount of worth something brings to society, the amount of suffering it causes. There's a myriad of things that people consider good or evil based on whatever arbitrary distinctions they have here. This is not me trying to do a whole morality is subjective, so these words mean nothing. These words have meaning. But I would say that it is inarguable that there is a higher level of evil, in so much as we could even quantify that word, with killing millions than just killing 2 or 3 people. Consider that in the situation of killing 2 or 3 people, or 1 or 2 people, as Dennis shows, there's a myriad of context that needs to be considered. Why did this happen? Was it premeditated because this person was under some sort of suffering? Was mental health involved as a problem here? There's a lot of things to consider, and this is not me trying to make apologia for somebody being a murderer. This is me pointing out, and thank you very much, Cyberazer, for following, but this is me pointing out that there's a lot more scenarios in which we can get into the headspace of a person when there's only a handful of kills that were involved. These could be crimes of passion. These could be issues of mental health. But we're talking about an architect for a slaughter camp. There's only 2 things I can really consider. Scenario A, he would have been killed if he had not done this. That's not me saying it's a good thing to make a death camp. But that is me saying there is a scenario in which self-preservation plays a key. Scenario B is that this person might not understand the implications of what they're making, but in either of these scenarios, once you know what you're doing, then I can argue that, no, yeah, this is infinitely more evil. What you're participating in is infinitely more evil than just killing a handful of people. Because this is going to be based on the objective ripple effects on the lives of people. If you were to go out today and kill 2 people, not that you should, don't, not a single one of you should do this, but if you kill 2 people, that has a ripple effect. You're not just hurting 2 people and extinguishing their life. You are also killing and hurting people who they are adjacent to. You are, let's say you kill a father, you are now traumatizing their partner, you are now traumatizing their children, you are now traumatizing their best friends, their family, and that has ripple effects going out. But there's a point in time where those ripples stop. If you kill 150,000 people, or you kill 1 million people, you're not just killing 1 million people, you are traumatizing and rippling out issues going forward. If you kill 2 people right now, how many people is that going to inspire to kill as well? Likely very few. But when it comes to the architect of the Holocaust, how many people have been inspired by that to commit more atrocities now? Neo-Nazis exist now, in the real world, still, to this day. Based on that alone, I would say that, yeah, we can say that there is measurably more evil in killing and being the architect of the Holocaust than there is with a single individual killing 2 people. There are copycat murderers for the 2 people, but with 1 million people there are people who want to be grandiose, remembered by history. And they don't care how they're remembered by history. And seeing something like the Holocaust, it emboldens them. It makes them go, oh, I could do this. On a smaller scale, there are people that have a very bad lot in life who desperately want to find an enemy to blame. a lot of people blame Jews. As a result, being the architect of the Holocaust emboldens those people. If you want to make a case that one is more or less evil, it is nightmarishly easy to make a case that being the architect of the Holocaust is way more evil. Now, on to the question of why would you kill that person? It is wrong to kill a person to get even, but it is impossible to get even when it comes to being the architect of the Holocaust. When you have that many bodies piled under you, that is impossible. However, there is a point to be made about making a statement. If you are engaged in the wholesale slaughter of that many people, holding you accountable for your actions is important. But there's another angle to this, because it's not that simple. It's never that simple. By the logic of saying that it's okay to kill the architect of the Holocaust, other similar architects for mass destruction and mass killings also need to be considered. So, Dennis, I ask you, Albert Einstein, or literally anybody who was involved in the Manhattan Project, should they be held responsible for their actions and tried for the creation of nuclear weapons that we had at the time? I would argue no. I would argue that those individual people, especially with the compartmentalization of the Manhattan Project, didn't have the ability to understand what was going on with everything there, nor did they really have the power to fight against it. Many of the people who were working on the Manhattan Project, if they were not the ones to do it, then another person would have been conscripted to do their job. I don't even know, outside of making a statement, how much I agree with even killing the architect of the Holocaust versus just imprisoning them and trying to find some way for them to give back to society what they took away. As impossible of a task as that's going to be. Because if we accept it in that scenario, we have to be consistent and accept it in other ones. And I don't know if Dennis would be willing to accept that we should be trying everybody who was involved in the Manhattan Project. Just as my example. And maybe I'm wrong. Give me challenges to this in the comments section or in the chat or what have you. But this is just where my brain goes when I'm thinking about this.
For any given individual, it's a purely emotional reaction on Israel's part. It was purely emotional. And
is it purely Wait, no, Dennis. No. I just gave logical reasons on my end as to why you would do that. There is a political statement that is made that is not emotional, but is a political statement that is made that is pragmatic by getting rid of somebody in the way that Israel did there. Which is, if you ever engage in atrocities like this again against us and our people, this is what is going to happen to you. No mercy for you. That is a pragmatic statement. That's not emotional. What Dennis is trying to argue here, though, is that emotion plays a part in whatever arbitrary line we draw in the sand for how many people somebody needs to kill. And the answer is, this is actually an argument from a heap. At what point, for those who don't know what the argument from the heap is, at what point does a grain of sand become a heap of sand? Is it when I have 3 grains of sand? Or is that a bunch of sand? Is it when I have 100 grains of sand? Or is that a handful of sand? At what point does a grain of sand become a heap? Dennis Prager's entire argument lies on this particular thought experiment. And unfortunately, here's the end results of the heap thought experiment. There is no way to determine when the grain of sand becomes a heap. There is no way to determine when a person has hit the magical arbitrary amount of lives lost for you to say, okay, now it's justifiable to kill you. Now we've hit the arbitrary amount that we need to. At no point can you hit that quantity. You can go, hey, should we kill a person for genociding a planet? And yeah, it's easy to make that argument. But the framing that Dennis is working with is that you can't find an arbitrary amount where you pass that threshold.
And by the way, there were people even then that said, oh no, Eichmann should live.
And there are people now who would be saying, no, they should live. They should find some way to pay back to society what they have done against them. Nobody can pay back anything to society in death.
And I never related to this. I've always said that there is a tremendous, a Grand Canyon-like chasm between those who think some murderers should die and those who think every murderer should be allowed to live. It's almost like we don't even understand each other.
Well, no, we don't. Because, again, your argument is an argument from a heap. From a logical perspective, if we look at this purely rationally, no emotion, as best we can, for human beings, it is literally impossible for us to divorce emotion from an argument, no matter how much somebody wants to say that you can. But let's pretend we can for a second. Logically, we are dealing with an argument from the heap. We are dealing with a scenario in which we have a magical, arbitrary amount of people that somebody has to have under their belt before we can kill them. Now, note, this is not the same thing as celebrating the passing of an individual. Anybody who celebrates that Hitler is dead, perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. Go right ahead. Celebrating the passing of a dangerous individual is not the same thing, though, as arguing that they should be killed. And I think, unfortunately, Dennis doesn't seem to know where that arbitrary line is, or at least he recognizes that, at least I hope he recognizes, that wherever the line is drawn is arbitrary. I hope. I hope a lot of things with Dennis. Mostly that he would just shut up.
Which may well be. We may not understand each other.
But we don't. Also, can I just say that these little snippets from the Fireside Chat are fascinating to me? Not in the arguments that are presented. Because the arguments that are presented are nightmarishly simple. That is Prager used bread and butter. But in the fact that they have the actual amount of time that you have left in the video down here, because these are meant to be seen on places like Twitter or places like TikTok. Well, not TikTok anymore. They got knocked off of TikTok. But it's fascinating to me because it feels like these are built for people who have very, very low attention spans. And I'm not trying to be derogatory to people who have low attention spans. I have a low attention span. But it definitely seems like this is meant for somebody who doesn't want to deep dive into a topic. This is meant for somebody who wants to just get their ideology and then be done and leave. That's what this feels like it's geared towards. And it does that. And granted, I've been sitting here talking about the implications of this conversation for 22 minutes at this point. There's certainly a lot of conversation to be had here, but at the end of the day, my video is going to appeal to fewer people than Prager's video, because Prager's is short, quippy, and effective at arguing his point. At least if you've already got some preconceived notions that he can prey on. Mine, not so much. It's going to be more rambly, there's going to be a little more interjection here, but his is built from a long series of dialogues where he is engaging in that rambly stuff, and this is a snippet from it. Marketing. Maybe I should get an editor to grab, like, the best of moments from my live stream. You know, all 2 of them. In all of my live stream. There's, like, 2 moments. There's, like, 2 moments that are good. And I don't even know what they are. But that said, what do you think? It's a complicated conversation. I know that I come on the end of being, you know, unironically pro-life here. Not pro-life in the sense that I don't think that people should get abortions, but pro-life in the sense that I'm not pro-death. I'm not pro-death penalty. And I think that rhetoric like this can be used by multiple people to justify putting mothers to death if they've had an abortion at any point. Putting anybody to death for engaging in it, for being the architect of an abortion. I feel like this type of argument is foundational to the next argument. Because if you accept the premise, no, every murder should not be allowed to live, and then you accept the premise that there is an arbitrary amount of people, say multiple, too, where we should be allowed to put a murderer to death, and then after that you accept that abortion is murder, if you don't hit the conclusion with those premises that we should be allowed to put people who engage in abortion to death, then at that point you're being kind of inconsistent. You've got to try to figure out a way to walk that back. And I feel like stuff like this is designed to get people to those conclusions. They're not conclusions I agree with, but I think arguments like this are designed to do so. But, let me know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below when this hits the channel. Let me know in the chat right now so that we can discuss this after the video. And if you are watching this on YouTube, also remember that if you want to be part of the discussions after the video portion is done, then head on over to Twitch. That's twitch.tv/NecoSuris, and you'll be able to be part of those discussions over there as they happen in real time. With all that said, thank you all for watching, and as always, insert any video tag